I'm Will, and I'm a member of the Hitmarker team here, and I'm going to be taking you through today's masterclass about writing an amazing cover letter, specifically for esports and video game jobs. But there'll be a lot of good stuff here if you're looking for other kind of creative cover letter, not cover letter, creative job positions. Going forward as well. So if you're looking for stuff in slightly more creative fields, then this will also help for you. But you won't be able to find those jobs on hitmarker.net, the home of esports and gaming jobs. There's a reason I'm about to go through. I got shouted out for going too long on the resume event. So this one is going to be kept to an hour. So we'll be finishing around 5 p.m. The standard stuff that we'll be getting through. So we're going to be taking you step by step through how we would recommend writing a cover letter, what kind of stuff you should be looking out for, and the steps that you should take from a blank Word document to something that you can turn into a PDF, send off with your resume, and really make an impression on the hiring manager in the right way, of course, because you don't want to be leaving a bad impression on your application, because that'd be bad. I've actually remembered to record from the beginning as well, so this will also be available later on. Apologies that we haven't got the resume stuff up just yet. We do have the recordings there all existent, which is deciding the best way of editing and putting that talk out as well. So don't you worry, we'll be getting that out alongside this talk as soon as possible. If you can't stay for the entirety of this or have joined us late, this will be available somewhere. But yeah, we're going to be just talking about cover letters. We haven't got too long to do it, and there's a decent amount of advice to get through, so we're just going to jump right on in. The thing that we have to talk about with cover letters, actually I should say before we start, because I am a good host, is if you are looking to ask any questions, if you've got any queries about anything we've talked about, or have a specific example that you'd like our advice for, make sure to stick your hand up. We've got a couple of people here who will let me know if we've got any questions in the chat, and we'll be able to drag you all up and you can ask your questions. And they'll be active in general chat as well, so if you've got anything that you want to ask writing and you don't want to be dragged up, either you don't have a microphone or you don't feel comfortable, feel free to ask a member of the Hitmarker team down in general as well if they're active, and they will be able to feed those questions through to me, and I'll be keeping my eyes on our notes and our private channels to make sure that I don't miss any questions or queries. So the difference between a resume and a cover letter is that with a resume it's very easy to give step-by-step guidance, section by section, because it's so easy to break up your resume into lots of different portions and sections. When it comes to writing a cover letter, it's very different. It's a longer form piece. You're writing in full paragraphs, full sentences, rather than bullet points and short sections, where in a resume you can have a single word for a skill. In a cover letter, that doesn't really work. So giving advice is much less about going through section by section, but just generally talking about what a cover letter should look like, and what you need to include and what messages you need to get across. And of course, a couple of the pitfalls that we see quite frequently when we're looking through people's cover letters and when we're seeing what people have submitted to job applications on our end. So obviously we're not going through and looking at everyone's cover letters, but when we're asked to look at them or when people apply for Hitmarker, we're going to be revealing a couple of the common areas that we see so that you can avoid making the same mistakes in the future. So as with any letter, because it's in the name, right? The salutation, or how you start the cover letter, is pretty important. The idea that you are writing to someone, but how do you address them? How do you start your cover letter? The classic "to whom they may concern" is bad. In most cases when it comes to video games and esports. We see that so frequently because it's what you're kind of trained to do when you talk about employability at school, which is where a lot of people that's the only place that I really got any idea of what I should be doing for applications, resumes, cover letters, that kind of thing, was at school when I was like 16. And that was a long time ago, because that was 8 years ago. Goodness gracious me. But it's not that advice doesn't really hold true in esports and gaming, and it's a little outdated because I'm old as hell. And some of you might also be old as hell, so you're going to need some updated new advice in order to help you get these jobs. So to whom they may concern, get rid. Kick it out. You want to be kind of targeting your salutation based on the role that you're going for and the company culture and atmosphere that company has. So the classic of dear hiring manager, dear sir/madam, greetings are all good in terms of a slightly more formal option, or dear company name. These are that's kind of the most formal you want to get when it comes to talking about this kind of stuff, when it comes to doing a cover letter for esports and video games, because it's respectful, but it's not overly formal. It's not stuffy, which to whom it may concern kind of is. If you're applying for a company that you know has a much more casual company culture, and again, just like on a resume, this doesn't mean look at what their social media manager posts and act accordingly to that. It means doing proper research, and we'll get into that in a bit, and matching that. This is especially true if you're going to a casual company or a more casual company where you're looking to do something like social media, like community management, marketing, stuff where having a good tone of voice, having a good brand is important. To match, it's good to go with something maybe like hello or hi there, right? Not super formal. You're not friends with the hiring manager in most cases, but it's good to be able to be a little less formal, to come at them in a more amiable approach, because quite often, if they've got a sea of to whom it may concern when they're hiring for an esports or gaming company, they'll see a hello or hi there, and they'll instantly be like, okay, cool, this person's talking to me as opposed to just doing the formulaic copy-paste to whom it may concern, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, the salutation is 3-4 words, so it's not super important, but it can leave the right or wrong impression from the get-go, and you really want to be on the right foot immediately when it comes to writing your cover letter. A cover letter is basically 3 parts, 3 major parts. You've got your opening, you've got the middle, and you've got your closing, your sign-off, your what you should be doing at the end of the cover letter. And each one kind of does a different role. Of course, the middle being the bulk of your cover letter, but we're going to talk about the opening first, because the job of the opening is quite different from the rest of the cover letter. You need to be gripping and drawing in the hiring manager, putting a smile on their face, leaving a good impression, and then setting yourself up for the rest of the cover letter, showing that you're the best person for this job. There's not, you don't need to go in great detail in your opening. It doesn't need to be we often see people basically go, the resume has a professional summary at the start, I'm just going to put that at the top of my cover letter and increase the amount of stuff in it so that it's long form for my cover letter. It's not really what this is meant to do. While the job of it is similar, the aim of the opening paragraph, really, for your cover letter is to, so grip the hiring manager. What you want to be doing is showing the hiring manager that you're interested in this job, that you're excited that this job exists, and just basically immediately say, look, I saw your job on Hitmarker, I saw your job wherever you found it, and I was really excited to see it, and I knew I had to apply, right? So often we see people do the classic opening line for cover letters, which is, I was interested to see that, let's pretend that Excel Esports is hiring for a social media manager. Let's pretend that Nathan's going on holiday for 6 months and he needs a replacement. Sitting down, and we would expect to see loads of people going, I was interested to see that Excel Esports was looking to hire a new social media manager on Hitmarker jobs. That's such a boring opening. Everyone does that kind of thing because, again, it's what you're trained to do at school. At least that's what I was trained to do at school. It doesn't fill me with excitement. It doesn't show that you're particularly interested. You say that you're interested, but the tone's not there. You're just saying where you found the job and what the job title is. And funnily enough, the hiring manager knows what the job title is. But you change that up, you add a little bit extra, you say, I was really excited to see that Excel Esports is hiring a new social media manager, and as a fan of the team, I had to apply. You're showing that you care more about this role. It's not just I'm applying for this job. It's look, I'm excited to apply for this job. I love the team, right? You're giving a little bit more information, not massively more, it must be said. You're still saying where you found the job, you're still saying what the job you're applying for is. And while, of course, they know the name of the job, and I said it as kind of a negative with the interested one, it's good to post because it shows that you've tailored this application at least to some extent. And hiring managers love that. The less generic your cover letter can be, the better. Not to say that you need to be wild and crazy on every single one, but you should be writing each one from scratch. Realistically, you should never be copy and pasting in a cover letter or an application in general. They should always be fully tailored and unique. So you want to show excitement, not just interest, right? And that's basically what you want to be doing with your opening line to grab the hiring manager and make them think, after a good salutation, a good first line, they're already semi-interested. They're not going to throw your cover letter away. Good hiring managers won't throw your cover letter away, even if the first line isn't the magnum opus that you've ever written, but you always want to be leaving the best impression and acting as if the hiring manager at any second, if they don't see exactly what they want to see, could throw your cover letter away. Once you've shown that you're excited to apply, maybe give a little bit of information on why you're excited to apply for the company. Why do you want to work for Excel Esports, right? You've already said that you're excited about the current job. Now you need to prove it a little bit. So this is where we're going to talk about research and knowledge of the company. There are two ways that you can get knowledge of a company. It's either by just being a fan, brand exposure, and just general life, or it's by research before you do your application. So let's say that you've been a lifelong fan of Excel Esports. You've been following them since they were playing in the UK scene. You've been a massive fan of them in the LEC. You know all about everything they're doing. You have pictures of their players signed on your wall. Chances are you already know way more about this company than a lot of the other applicants will, who don't know anything about League of Legends or Fortnite esports. It's good to use this information. It's good that you have this baseline knowledge. You will still need to do some extra digging just to make sure that you know exactly what the role entails, what people have done in the role previously to you, and to talk about some of the more business side of things. Because if you're just a general fan of Excel Esports or a general fan of another company, you're not necessarily going to know the ins and outs of how they operate internally, which you would probably want to know before applying for a job. But you'll be able to talk about their latest achievement, the fact that they got a massive win in the LEC recently, the fact that Wolfies picked up a massive win in Fortnite, right? You'll be able to use that information that you already have, so you don't need to go away and research it because, hey, you were there, you were watching it on Twitch. On the other hand, if you're applying for a company, if you don't know anything about them, if you've never seen a game that they're playing, or you're coming in from a slightly different place, so maybe you're applying for a video game company and you don't necessarily play the games that they create currently, so you're applying for a company that makes tactical shooters and you're more of a MOBA person or you're more of a sports game person, it's worth doing your research. And this first opening paragraph, you need to prove that you've done some of that research, not info dumping, not telling them their quarterly fiscals, because again, A, they know that information, B, that's a little bit too much and isn't going to excite them. But you do need to show that you've gone away and you've spent time looking into the company, understanding what their products are, looking at news articles around them. The news feature on Google is brilliant when you're doing research for a company that you're applying for, because it doesn't only show you what the company wants you to see via their LinkedIn, via their social media, via their website, but it also shows you news around the company. So if they're making big moves into a new market, if they've got a new title that's coming out, if a title is being delayed that they're making, if something has gone wrong with the company. It's great to look at this stuff before you apply, especially if it's a case of sometimes if you look at news articles, you'll see red flags. Like, has the company just done massive layoffs? Has the company been involved in anything that is suspicious over the past few months, right? Doing your research can protect you from this, but by and large, a lot of companies are great to work for. So let's assume that the company you're applying for is amazing. The news articles are all positive. Maybe they're bringing out a new product. This is a great place to mention that. Something like, say you're excited about the job, you've done all that, blah, blah, blah. Your next sentence can be... or you grow on for the next sentence and you say, I'm really excited to apply for this social. I had to apply for this job. Looking at how the company's been expanding over the past few months has been really inspiring, and especially when you're moving into this new product, which I'm a huge fan of, or which has been something that I follow for a while, this is the perfect time for me to be applying for a role with you, right? Again, shows a little bit why you're good for the job, why you're the good person, but easily proves that you've done your research. And if a hiring manager sees someone who's done their research, they're going to be much more inclined to hear them out. They're going to be much more willing to read through the entire cover letter with a positive mindset, right? They're going to be like, this person has spent time to write a cover letter for this job. Let's see what they have to say. So show you've done your research. And of course, the research is going to come through in the rest in the middle of your cover letter, where a lot of the really important bulk like experience and stuff comes in. But you want to front load a little bit of it just to give a taste and to show that you've done it, right? So what you've done so far in this opening is you've gripped the hiring manager, you've shown them that you're excited for the role, and you've shown them that you're serious. You've taken time to do some research on their company, and you've sprinkled in a little bit about why you're the perfect person for the job. Now that you've got their attention, it's time to hit them with the, now I'm ready to be in, I'm the perfect person for this job, right? This is where you front load a little bit about your experience, a little bit about your education, a little bit about your background, that is going to make you the best person for this job in your mind and in the eyes of the hiring manager. So you've said that you're excited for the job, you've said that they're bringing out a new product that you've been following for a while, so it's the perfect time for you to join. Now you hit them with that third line that I graduated university with a degree in game development, say the company's making a new game, and I've spent the last year in a development studio working on X product or working to hone my craft, and now it's the time for me to take my next step with company, right? Now you've hit them with a little bit of information extra. You've added why you're there, and you've kind of front-loaded a little bit of information. Again, it's a case of front-loading just a tad of everything into this first paragraph to sell yourself the best way possible for this role. Again, this doesn't want to be a professional summary light. The way you're writing it is going to be more long form. You're not so worried about the size and the amount of words that you're using in a cover letter because you're not strictly saved to go to more one page. With a resume, going over one page is not a mistake, but it's not optimal. Going over 2 pages is a mistake. But if you're writing a cover letter, it can be a little bit longer. And it doesn't have to be super well formatted with columns and stuff. It can just be blocks of text. It can just be paragraphs of text. Essentially, what you want to do after you've written this opening is, before you continue on to the rest of your cover letter, go back and read through your opening again. This is something that people miss all the time, is this idea of not actually rereading and editing stuff as they go. They'll just write a cover letter and then they'll just send it off. Or they'll write a cover letter, they'll do one skim through to make sure there aren't any squiggly red or blue lines under anything they've written, and they'll send it off. This is not enough if you really want this job. You've got to think, are you putting in enough effort to your cover letter, to your application, to get yourself the job? Because effort shows in everything you do in an application. So if you're just skimming through it and making sure that there are no obvious spelling errors before sending, that's realistically not enough. Write a section, then you go back, you read through it, and you need to be making sure that you check off the key parts of each section to make sure you're doing everything. You need to be showing that you're excited for the job. You need to be telling them why you're applying. You need to be showing that you've done a little bit of research, and you need to be telling them why you're a good fit for the role. There's no perfect cookie cutter three sentence plan like there is in a professional summary, and that's something that will be a theme throughout this talk for the next 40 minutes, is there's no just add this, this, and this, and you'll be fine. The cover letter will be perfect. It needs to be well written, and you will understand your writing style better than I will. You'll understand your writing style better than a recruiter will, right? So you'll know how you can best get across your message and how you will best present yourself. So it's a case of writing this stuff down, making sure you've ticked every single box, and that you haven't done loads of stuff you don't need to do. And then it'll be about moving on to the middle section. When it comes to writing stuff like this, you really, really want to be succinct and simply getting across your message. You don't need to have a massive thesaurus next to you to make sure that you're using the most eloquent language. As long as it's simple to read and the hiring manager can follow it correctly and easily, then you're having a great time. So you don't need to worry about that. Just going to grab a little sip of water, and then we'll get on to the meat, the body of the cover letter, which is also going to be the body of this talk, because there's the most to say about it. I'm not on apple juice today, I'm afraid. I'm on vitamin water. So for anyone who was hoping for that, I finished my apple juice earlier, which is disappointing, but I'll have to buy some new stuff tomorrow. Right, let's talk about the body of the cover letter. This is the majority of the stuff that you're going to have in your cover letter because it's the longest section, right? You've got the hiring manager, you've got their attention, they're excited to see what you have to say, they understand that you've done a bit of research, and they want to see what other research you've done on their company. And you've shown a little bit about who you are as well, by the way that you've written it. Now it's a case of showing off what you think the hiring manager... Now it's a case of showing, not telling, showing exactly why you're the perfect person for this role. Why you're a candidate who's got the experience required, why you've got the skills that they need, and how all of the stuff that you've done up until this point professionally and academically would make you the person that they want to be bringing into interview, to bringing into hire. So this is where we often get a lot of questions. So what do you do if you do not have experience related to the role? Or what do you do if you do not have that much experience that you can lean on in this section? Because it's very, very easy if you've got 5 years of experience in esports management to talk about that when you're applying for an esports management job. If you've got 7 years in model art in game studios, it's very easy to write about that for a game model art position at a game dev studio. But what if you're just graduating? What if you're just leaving high school or university, or you haven't really got that much relevant information? Maybe you've worked in hospitality or retail and you're looking to get into a job in sales or business development or marketing. How are you meant to get across that experience relevantly? How are you meant to sell yourself using those skills or that experience? Well, it's all about going to your resume, right? You'll have written your resume before you write your cover letter in most instances, right? So go over to your resume and see how you've done that. See what skills you've mentioned there. Again, we're not going to go over too much what we talked about in the resume talk, because we talked a lot about that in the resume talk, and we'll be putting that stuff out so you'll be able to catch it. But we talked an absolute load about how to sell yourself, what stuff you should be putting in there, and using the job application to get that across. I think it's important for you to know what's in the job application. You want to have that open as well when writing your cover letter, but just see how you could be selling skills from the experience that you have, even if it doesn't seem on surface level the most relevant. If you're asking about, what's the word? I've lost the word. When you're talking about your experience, you want to be using stuff that you've done. So if you've worked in hospitality, but you're applying for a sales job, think about how your role in hospitality could give you the skills, that you developed the skills, that you achieved things that someone in sales would want to see, right? And this is where you can talk about it in a longer form way, as opposed to maybe the sentence that you did in your resume, if that, right? Because you don't want to be retreading ground massively when you're on your cover letter. Your cover letter should be giving expanding on general points and themes. So it's a case of, if your most recent experience is really good, don't ignore it on your cover letter because it's in your resume, but you don't want to be going point for point the same stuff, because the hiring manager doesn't need to read it twice. If there's something that you can really expand on and really give in-depth information on in your cover letter, you can certainly do that, but try and find new ground to tread as often as you're going over stuff that's already been mentioned in brief. But the fact is, on a resume, when you're talking about your experience, whether it's relevant or you feel like it's slightly less relevant, in your resume it's a bullet point, it's 2 bullet points, 3 bullet points. In your cover letter, it could be an entire paragraph. So again, you'll know your writing style better than I will. You'll understand how you can be laying this out. But what we recommend quite often is, again, welcome to year 9 English. You should be using PEA. If you haven't been educated in what that is, it's essentially a way of laying out your paragraphs to give across all the information and to make you seem like the best candidate to get everything across every single time. In fact, we're going to use PEAL because we're fancy and wanted to add an extra letter. So the first thing you want to be making every single paragraph is a point. There needs to be a reason why you're adding every single thing to this cover letter, because while it's going to have more words than your resume, most likely, because you won't be doing so much formatting, the stuff's long form, so there'll be more space for stuff. There's no point adding stuff that doesn't add value. If something in your resume is in your cover letter is not going to increase your chances of being employed, why is it in your cover letter? There's no point mentioning it. Just ignore it and add something that's a little bit better. Don't pad stuff out. Don't pad out your cover letter. Never do that. So every time you're writing a cover letter, sometimes it's often good to just start by going through and listing the points that you want to make, the 2 or 3 points that you think are going to be most valuable in the body of your cover letter to impress the hiring manager. If you're going for a social media role at an esports organization, maybe your first point is about your experience in your previous job with social media marketing. Then maybe the second point is your education in general marketing styles. And then maybe your third point is your experience within sales that you did when you were at university, and how you think there are skills there that would be perfect for the company for what they've asked for, right? Just listing that out means that you know going into writing your cover letter, it's much less daunting because you know that there's good stuff that you're going to mention. You understand and you've gone through the job application and you've gone, yeah, you know what? I can make enough points to make a case for myself being someone who works at this company. This job, I am qualified and ready to do this job. And that can be really like heartening when you're going into writing a cover letter, especially if you're on the full-time job hunt. I've been there, where you've been writing multiple cover letters a day, you've been writing multiple applications a day, and maybe not hearing anything back from a lot of them. It can be rough. It can be difficult. And like trying to bring yourself back to a new application, a new cover letter, blank page, when you've sent out multiple cover letters and you've heard nothing back, that super sucks. But writing out the points to show that you're qualified for the job, it can be it can make things seem much easier to write. And trust me, as a thing, it lays things out quite well. And worst case scenario, you try and think of a number of points that would make you seem like a good candidate. You can't think of enough of them. Then maybe you're not the perfect candidate for this role. That's not the end of the world. It can suck if you see your dream company hiring for your dream role and realizing you're not necessarily there yet. Don't worry about it. The right job for you will be out there. It's just a case of finding it, and that job might be a stepping stone into your dream job, or hey, maybe you'll prefer working at this new one anyway. So you've got your points listed. You've got your point for your first paragraph. E, evidence. What you want to be doing here is proving that what you've said is true and accurate, because it's very easy. I could sit here and say, I'm great at business development. Spoiler alert, I'm not. I've never had that job in my life. But what you want to be doing is showing that you can do that thing. So if someone says, if you say, I've got a wealth of experience in business development, prove it. Tell them where you've worked in business development. Tell them what you did, right? This doesn't need to be super long. Just saying, during the last 5 years of employment, I've worked with big names in the esports scene as a business developer, including XYZ. That's often enough to be evidence, right? You don't need to go super in depth because that's what the next part's for, but it is just a case of your point making the point and being the eye-catching thing that is going to make you seem like the perfect person for the role. The evidence is there to back it up if the employer's like, is that true? You should never leave any doubt in the mind of the employer after the second sentence of a paragraph in the middle of your cover letter. It should always be like, I'm not going to question that this person has business development experience because I've seen it. They've said that they have and they proved it, right? And again, your resume will have the fact that you worked in multiple companies for business development. Don't worry too much about mentioning that again, but you don't need to do the exact same stuff that you talked about in your resume. There's much more space and you can go more into depth. The A is analysis. this is where you're going to show that why all of this stuff is relevant, right? So you're going to say you worked in business development and that you've done it for multiple good companies. Now talk about why this business development stuff is good. Talk about the skills, talk about the achievements, talk about the things that are going to really be the things to set you apart. Because when you're applying for a biz dev role, lots of the candidates will have biz dev experience. Lots of the candidates will be able to prove they have biz dev experience because it will be on their resume and they'll have mentioned it in their cover letter. But where it sets you apart is what you did in these business development positions, or if you're talking about a job that's a little bit less relevant. So you're saying, I have hospitality experience that has made me a resilient and exceptional salesperson. In the past 5 years, I've spent time working for multiple different companies in these kind of positions. Now it's time for you to make that point link back to the it's time to make that point worth something to the hiring manager. So what you want to do is you want to talk about what you achieved in the role, and you want to talk about what you learned in the role. It's the classic, we don't want to hear about what you did day to day in the position unless that's leading to something. So if you're talking about exceptional leadership skills is your point, yes, you can talk about each day I was running company meetings and ensuring that everyone in a 10-person team knew what they were doing for that day and that tasks were being completed on time. You then want to talk about, like, yes, that's fine. You can say that. It tells you what is part of the role. But you then want to talk about why that's relevant, right? The analysis. So you can say you looked after this 10-person team and everything was done. And then you can go on to talk about how if tasks weren't being done, then it was your chance, like it was your opportunity to fill in and help people, to instruct and educate those beneath you in the skills that they needed, and to support the team, keep motivation up, and do all of this stuff that is going to make you seem like the perfect candidate, because the company's looking for a leader. Because if they weren't, they wouldn't have mentioned it, and it wouldn't be a point on your cover letter. The analysis is going to be the bulk of each paragraph because it's where you set yourself apart. And while a lot of cover lettering is just ticking boxes so that the hiring manager can see that you're worth shortlisting, the analysis part is where you, rather than showing that you should be shortlisted, shows that you're the best person, right? The points and the evidence show that you're a candidate worth shortlisting. Gripping the person at the beginning shows you're a candidate worth shortlisting. But the analysis, the what you achieved, why you're good at what you do, is not only why you're shortlisted, but also why you're the best candidate, why you're the person they should be most excited about, why you're the person that adds value more than anyone else. And that's why it's the longest section in each paragraph. Again, it's difficult for me to go through and say this is exactly what you should include in each part, because every paragraph you write is going to be different. Everyone in here is going to have different experience with different achievement, different skills. But you should just be able to look back at the end of each paragraph you've written at the analysis section and see the most impressive stuff that you've done in each role, or the most impressive stuff that backs up your argument or backs up your point. And then the final sentence, the L, is link. Now what you want to do is you want to very clearly go back to the application, go back to the job you're applying for, and tell the hiring manager why what you've just talked about in that paragraph makes you perfect for the role. And you'll have been doing that covertly throughout the entire paragraph. You'll have been doing that by showing all this amazing experience that you've got and why it's great, or showing the skills you developed and why they're amazing. But now you want to show them directly that this is for them. So you've talked about your leadership skills, you've talked about how you were a great motivator, and you know that the company wants that. The final sentence of your paragraph should be, all of this motivational leadership experience has made me the perfect person to take a step up into a more management position, and with XL Esports looking for a new manager, this makes me perfect for the role. Right? Or something along those lines. It's talking directly to the hiring manager, it's talking to the company, and it's saying, you might have heard all of this, but look, here's the analysis, now you should hire me. It shows that you're tailoring your cover letter to the company, because you're not just leaving it generically that you're a good leader, you're saying you're a good leader for them. You're showing that you've read through the job application, because you're showing that you understand that that is what they need. And it's a very strong way of closing out your each paragraph of your cover letter. It anchors everything into the application, and it's just a good way of finishing things off. Again, you don't have to be that direct if you don't feel comfortable. You can do it a little bit more subtly. So you can say something like, with all this motivation experience, with all this experience under my belt with motivating and leading small teams, I'm looking for an opportunity to utilize this as a primary role in my next job, rather than as a supplementary part of different responsibilities, right? It's less direct. You're not talking directly at the company, but you're showing why you're applying for this job and why the stuff above is relevant to this specific job. That is going to be the meat of your cover letter, because you're going to have probably 3 or 4 of those paragraphs. They don't have to be super long, but if you can go back through each one of those and tick off, I've made a good point that the hiring manager is going to want to see. I've proved that point is correct and true by my evidence. And when you're doing stuff, especially if it's not just experience-based, but when it's about skills or education where you don't have that experience, or when it's about experience that on the surface isn't as relevant, the evidence is super important, because you need to prove that. You can't just say that you're a great public speaker. You need to have proof of that, and you need to be saying it early so that you're not being suspicious to the hiring manager. You can tick that off. Then analysis, have you shown why any of this is relevant, why this is good stuff? Have you talked about achievements? Have you talked about development? You could tick that off. And then finally, have you tied all of that together into the general application? And if you can tick off all of these things onto a winner, you've written a good paragraph. Great stuff. If you can't tick off all these things, think about why you can't tick them off. Is something missing? If, say, you can't give evidence into why you're a good public speaker, maybe you're the best public speaker in the world, but maybe you haven't got any formal education, no experience in it. You just kind of chat with your mates and they all say you're a great speaker. You could be a great speaker, but if there's no evidence, then it's going to be difficult for it to add value to your cover letter, to your application. Same with a point. If there's no point to your paragraph, there's no point including it. It's in the phrase, there's no point including it. You've got analysis. If there's no analysis there, and you're kind of just making a point and saying, I'm a good public speaker and here's my education in public speaking, if you can't add more to that than just saying it and approving it, is it something that's going to set you apart? Is it really something that's worth adding? Is this something that, at that point, is it something that would look better on your resume? Because basically, when you make a point and evidence for it in your resume, that's fine, usually. If you're adding an achievement, that's even better. But maybe it's something for the resume, not for the cover letter. And if you can't link all of that back to the application you're making, then you might be very impressive, but it's not going to matter to the hiring manager. It's not going to matter to the company, because they're looking for someone to do their job. They're not looking for someone who's good at public speaking, who's just good at public speaking for the sake of it. They're looking for someone who's good at public speaking to do the job at the company. And that's what they're going to care about. So you should show that that is exactly what you are, that's who you are, and that's why you're applying for the job, right? You do this 3 or 4 times onto a winner. You've got the body of your cover letter sorted. It's going to be great. I'm very excited for you. Cheeky drink break, and then we'll talk about the conclusion, which is always very exciting and difficult to write. Right, you've made it all the way to the end of your cover letter, right? You've got these awesome few paragraphs about your experience. You've got a really strong opening. You've got the salutation correct. So by this point, the hiring manager should really think that you're technically speaking, you're the best person for the job, or that you're qualified to be taken to interview if you are, right? You've already showcased all of this stuff. But quite often, and this is the classic that you'll hear from students when they're writing to get into university, when they're writing their personal statements for that, because, oh boy, that's a challenge. I know that from experience. Or if you're writing personal statements to get into a college or anything like that. You can't just be the most technically proficient person to get a job. You have to be a well-rounded human being. And you need to show that there's more to you than just the experience that you've gained professionally or the education that you've gained, right? And hopefully in the way that you've written, you'll probably have added some personality to your cover letter. They'll be able to see a little bit about you from the experience that you've had. If you've been working in esports forever, they'll be able to tell a little bit about you. If you've written in a certain way, they'll be able to tell a little bit about you. But now it's your time to tell them about the person behind the words directly, right? This is where you want to talk about things that you haven't mentioned above in your more technical experiential based stuff. So hiring managers want to hire people that they can relate to, that they'd enjoy working with, right? They don't want to hire someone who's a really good social media manager who's a nightmare to work with because they're not responsive, they're kind of mean, they're not interesting. Like, they don't want to work with that person. However, they do want to work with someone who's technically proficient, can do the job, you've shown that above already, but could also be someone that they can talk to, that they would enjoy having with them at the office every day, that they enjoy having on Zoom calls every day, right? Don't be afraid to show that off a little bit and be honest about your passions, right? You're applying for a video game and esports job. Your passion for video games and esports should be abundantly clear in your cover letter. You should be talking about, if you're applying for a game dev studio, have you played their games? Why do you love their games? Why are you attracted to working with a company that makes them? Maybe you've been applying for Riot. You've been playing League of Legends for 10 years. You've never made it out of Silver 1, but that's okay because you have fun, right? That's not talking from experience. I'm actually a very high elo player. No one can prove otherwise. But you want to be able to show this. If you're applying for a job in social media, you want to show why you care about doing this stuff, why you're passionate about it. Side projects that maybe aren't the most relevant. But another thing that you want to be doing is you want to be talking about other things that you're passionate about as well. I know the classic of people believing that they need to live and breathe and sleep esports if they want to get it in this industry, if they want to grow in the esports world. If someone comes up to me and all they can talk about is jungle pathing from level 1 to 3, I don't want to talk to that person very long. That's super boring. You want to show that you're a well-rounded character. You have hobbies, you have interests, you do other stuff outside of just your strict work bubble, your strict work funnel, that makes you an interesting person, right? And we talked in the resume that you can add a hobby section to that if there's space, but there's often not. This cover letter is where you're going to have space to talk about that kind of stuff. Be honest about who you are. There's no point lying about who you are on a cover letter, because if you're going into a job interview and you've said that you're the most passionate West Ham United supporter in the world because you looked on LinkedIn and you saw that the hiring manager was a passionate West Ham United fan, they're going to ask you what you think of the season so far, and you might not know because you've never watched a football game in your life. Don't lie about who you are. Don't lie on your applications, is what I'm trying to get out there. But do be honest, be happy to be yourself, because you're someone that's worth hiring. 99% of the time you're someone worth hiring. So be that person, right? And maybe you won't fit in every single office environment. Not every single company will be perfect for you, right? Maybe you hate sport and there's a company that's hiring who's super passionate about sport, right? Doesn't mean you can't work there, obviously. But maybe there's the next application is to somewhere that's really into, the hiring manager's really into gardening, and there's all of this other stuff that you're really into as well. And you might be the perfect fit for that office. So be honest about who you are in this section. You can embellish a little. You can say you're really good at baking when you're only like so-so at baking. But that's kind of as far as I would take it in the lying sense. And that's kind of your ability to fill in gaps. Don't be afraid to talk about stuff that's not necessarily just hobby-based. Make sure you're happy to talk about stuff that is more like professional, but you haven't had a chance to mention it here. So maybe you're applying for a business development role. You talked about your business development experience. Feel free to mention that your career path is taking you, rather than university, you've worked your way up in hospitality and then in retail sales, and then you got your first biz dev role. You can mention stuff like this here. It's a great place to put it. And it's another way of just giving a little bit of insight into who you are, as opposed to just being a technically proficient worker, it makes you a human being. And hiring managers want to hire human beings. So it's definitely worth doing, I would say. And this is the best place for it. Now, and you want to finish this. So after you've done that nice little paragraph about who you are and humanizing yourself, again, do it throughout the entirety of it. But this is a great place to put it strictly. You want to talk about, you just want to finish off, not sign off because that's something slightly different, but you want to finish off the whole document by saying that you want to basically just link the whole thing, the whole cover letter, back to the application and say, like, the classic in conclusion or in summary, I'm a perfect person for this role because X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't have to be super long. It doesn't have to be absolutely thrilling stuff. It just needs to be a case of reminding the hiring manager why you're here and reminding them that they should be giving you an interview, right? In conclusion, I am a hardworking professional marketing marketer with multiple years of experience and skills and achievements in the sector that I can bring to your company to help take it to the next level with its new product, right? Good sign off, good round out. And then you go to your simple, confident sign off that basically puts the ball into the hiring manager's court, right? Something along the lines of, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for your consideration, or thank you for taking the time to look over my application. I look forward to hearing from you soon, or I look forward to hearing from you. You could also do stuff like, if you've got any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me at email address. Feel free to reach out to me. You'll have given them contact details in your resume, so they'll have abundant opportunities to look there and find stuff, but just adding it here makes their life a little bit easier. And as we said, a bunch of the resume stuff, you want to be making the hiring manager's life as easy as possible, and this is a way of doing that. Again, don't be super formal. Don't do the whole yours sincerely, yours faithfully. Nah. Just the classic, thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing from you. Right? Once you've written that line, and you've signed your name at the bottom, you've ended your document. Your drafted cover letter is now written. I won't call it your first draft, because if you've been following our advice, you've been reading over every paragraph as you finished it and making sure that everything is perfect and fixing or removing if it's not. So your document will have gone through multiple stages of reading at this stage, but now you've got the whole thing on paper. That's awesome. That's amazing. Let's talk about the couple of things that you want to be doing just to make sure that it's the perfect document that you're happy to send off. Check your spelling and grammar, and that doesn't just mean looking for red squiggly lines or running it through Grammarly. You need to be reading through it and making sure, read it aloud to make sure that it reads well, that you're not having sentences that are 7 lines long and are just commas, because no one about to not take breaths when they're reading, right? Make sure that the word choice is good. Make sure it's easy to follow. Again, make sure you haven't just added extra words because they sound fancy. You want to make things as easy and as simple to read as possible. You want this document to have all the information available and easily extractable by the hiring manager or the recruiter or whoever's reading this cover letter, because then they're going to be able to find everything they need and go, yeah, this is the right person for the job. On to the interview. On to that next step. So you need to read the whole thing through, make sure there's no spelling errors, make sure there's no grammar errors. The number of spelling errors that we've seen where it's a case of they've written a different word because there's one letter off, and it won't come up in spelling checks because the words bread and Brad are both words. But if you're trying to say bread and you say Brad, that looks bad. It looks like you haven't taken the time and the care and attention to the job application that you should have if you've got any kind of errors in there. And yeah, a hiring manager's not going to throw your cover letter away if you've misspelt one word or if you've used the wrong form of it's or there. But it's not going to put you in the greatest light moving forward, right? And there will be people who have perfectly written, spelling and punctuated and grammar controlled cover letters because they've taken the time to make sure it's all perfect. And you need to be one of those people if you're serious about getting the job that you're applying for. Now that you've written your cover letter, you've gone through it multiple times, you've made sure it's not wordy, you've made sure it's not badly laid out, you've made sure that the spelling and grammar is all perfect, you can now look at the classics of how are you sending this over? How is this looking? Please use a standard font and styling. Please don't use Comic Sans. Please don't use some yellow text. Black text on white background is fine here. And we said that on resumes you want to be going a little bit different. This is a different document. Black text on white background is absolutely fine. Make sure you're saving it as a PDF with a name that isn't just cover letter. We've seen that a whole bunch where people have just written cover letter because when you're going through your documents, searching cover letter is perfect because you'll know what that is. If you're applying for a job, a hiring manager or a recruiter is going to see a lot of documents named cover letter, and you want yours to be as easy to find and as easy to sort as possible. So make sure you're naming it your full name, and then you can put in brackets cover letter or first name underscore last name underscore cover underscore letter. That is the perfect way of naming this document. Please do it. And then if you're saving it internally on your computer, so if you're writing a new cover letter every single time and you want to make sure that you can easily sort and find certain cover letters for the future, send them off with that name and then rename them on your computer, that name, and then in brackets the role that you're applying for. So in brackets you put social media manager at Excel, right? Because then it's still easy for you to find on your end, but it's still professionally sent over and easy to find on theirs. I think that might be... Oh, the only last thing that we've said a little bit, please don't copy and paste your cover letter. Please, please, please do not do that. Even if you're like, I'm going to write a template cover letter and then I'll Control F for the company name and I'll change things up. Never, never, never do that. We've all done it. Don't get me wrong. But as you've hopefully seen by the way that we talked through this entire process, it needs to be authentic, it needs to be tailored, it needs to be specific for the role. And copy and pasting is, by and large, the same paragraph will not land in two different cover letters, even if it's a similar kind of job. If you're applying for a social media manager at two different companies, they're going to ask for different things. So it's very unlikely that you're going to not have to make massive changes to any paragraph to make it relevant for a new company. And at that stage, why aren't you just writing a new one? Why aren't you just writing a new paragraph? Why aren't you just increasing the amount you're talking about this certain thing or removing that entirely? So make sure you write it all from scratch. I know it's long. I know it's tough when you're applying for jobs. I know it's difficult when you're getting rejections or getting ghosted. But trust me, it's much better. Hiring managers will appreciate a tailored cover letter much more, and you're more likely to get hired. And at the end of the day, this is the whole process. It's difficult when you're writing loads and loads, but you just need to get one acceptance, and you've got a job and you don't need to worry about writing cover letters anymore, right? So please, please, please write a new one every single time. That's all of the stuff I've got written down to share with you today. Again, we've taken bits from all over the place. We've got a really amazing article on Hitmarker that's about writing cover letters, both for full-time paid work in esports, which a lot of it can be used in video gaming as well. And we've also got one on internships and how you should be writing a cover letter to land yourself an amazing internship, which we haven't gone into specifically here, but there's a couple of extra tips on there that will be really, really useful. You can find all of those if you jump over onto Hitmarker. At the top right-hand corner, there's a section called Career Advice. I don't think people understand this section exists enough. It's so good. There's so much useful information on there. All of you should go check it out. I promise you won't regret it. There's a bunch of stuff on there, not just for cover letters as well. I'm just looking at my lovely mod boys, if there are any hands up or questions that want to be asked. If not, I'll give a teaser for what's coming next in the next couple of weeks. And then we'll be able to jump off. So, 2 weeks' time, we're going to be having our next masterclass event, and this one is going to be very exciting because it's something that we haven't specifically spoken about before, to my knowledge, or not for a very long time. We're going to be talking about job interviews and exactly what you should be doing before, during, and after a job interview to make it the most positive aspect of your application. And how you could turn a really good job interview into landing that dream role. So we're going to be going through all of our advice for that. We're going to have amazing content there. So make sure you're tuning in. That'll be in 2 weeks' time. We'll confirm on our social media and in Discord when that's going to be going live. So make sure that if you've just come here for the first time, make sure you're joining up onto Discord. You'll be able to see all of our notifications. We don't notify very often, but when we do, it's usually good stuff like an event or an opportunity. And of course, make sure to follow us over on Hitmarker, because we'll be giving you all of the best information, all the best jobs and career advice as well to help you land your dream job in esports and video games. I believe that is everything that we have to share with you today. Again, feel free to reach out and ask us any questions. The whole Hitmarker team here in Discord is happy to help, and we have a section for people looking for feedback if you've got a document that you want to have looked over. If you've got any questions, we've got an amazing community as well who are always happy to help out and support each other. So this is definitely the place to be when it comes to looking for work in esports and gaming. I've been Will, and we will hopefully see you all again in a couple of weeks for our next event. If you missed any of this event, you're just joining us now, or you joined us halfway through, we have recorded the whole thing, so we'll be getting that out to you at some point in some form. We're just deciding the best, most aesthetic way of doing so, but again, we'll keep you updated on socials when that is available. So massive thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you in a couple of weeks for our next interview event. Cheers.